The Army values. The Army values. The Warrior ethos. Coaching. Okay, so I'm going to start this over again for the purposes of editing for when we do put this on a podcast, because that looked like garbage. Everybody, hold on. The Army values. The Warrior ethos. Coaching and therapy. This is Warrior Leadership. That was worth it, man. You got to make sure that's right, because that is badass. Pardon my language. I love it. This is Warrior Leadership, and I'm here with DB the therapist. And to start off, before we get into the meat and potatoes, we each want to talk about our promotion. So today, I'm not going to talk about anything for sale, but I'm going to talk about my live training that I'm going to do. It's going to be exclusive. You have to register for it. But next week on Wednesday, it's going to be at 5 o'clock Central Time, and it's going to be on what leadership is, because apparently that's still confusing to people, and why it's important to your professional development. And I'll put the link below here. But please register for that. It's free. Be a part of it. Listen to it. If you don't like it, move on. It's going to be great. Anyway, DB, what do you got for a promotion, buddy?
Still promoting my support group, Man Cave support group, trying to build up the online group. I already have my in-person group is already full, so I'm looking to fill some slots for the online group. So anyone that's interested, definitely reach out to me on any of the socials at DB the therapist, and we can get you some more information about the support group.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to start it off again by saying this is Warrior Leadership. So today we're going to talk about delegation. And this is video number 2 in our 4-part series on leading by example. And leading by example is actually the last one, if I'm not mistaken. But this is important. Delegation, this is a huge leadership topic because it revolves around trust. And it really boosts people up in the whole 9 yards, because it's an entire professional development experience when delegation happens in the workplace. What do you think, DB? What's your take on it?
Delegation revolves around trust. I have to be transparent here, is that, part of when we first started working with each other, I know you've been really helping me and instrumental in helping me on the leadership side of the house with my business. And you told me that about 6 months ago. And that's been one of my major barriers is, when it comes to delegating responsibility, it's a huge trust issue with me. And that's, I think, for me, I've been so used to leaders. And this is kind of going into our first point, I think, is I've been used to people dumping and not necessarily delegating. And so I'm looking forward to, hearing from you, Coach, about what is delegating? What does it actually look like? Not you say that you're delegating, but yet you're not really delegating the responsibility. And what does that sort of framework look like? Because I think that's important.
So a lot of people misuse their assistant managers. They misuse their employees, and it's because they don't understand what delegation is. Mm-hmm. Delegation is not just giving more tasks to other people. It's the responsibility that comes along with it, giving them the opportunity to plan what's in their lane, run with what's in their lane. So the reason why trust is such a big issue with delegation is because what that truly is getting a group of people together and saying, we need this, and this done. I'm going to trust you to plan and execute this, and I'm going to trust you to plan and execute that. Now that we got this done, what would you do? And if you don't know the answer, please take some time to plan this out and come back to me with an answer, and we'll figure this out together. is so there's a planning and execution process that goes along with delegating. But the biggest thing is you have to be able to trust the process. You have to trust not just the people, but you have to trust that the work will get done, not necessarily your way, but the way that somebody else would do it while still accomplishing the mission.
That's good. And, you know, I think that key word, that key phrase in there, not necessarily your way, is one of the things that you helped drill into my mind. I remember you saying that on repeat to me over and over again. And I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I spent I spent almost $6,000 on executive coaching for that person to never just tell me that one phrase to get me to that place where I felt comfortable with trust and bringing somebody along, having someone come alongside me and delegate, you know, important tasks like billing, the administrative part of the function of my job. Just that one phrase, man. You know, I spent $6,000 to not hear that phrase. And I feel like I want to like go back and get my money back and give all 6,000 to you, coach, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest. I want to give you all of that $6,000 because you pay. I mean, and look, I'm not crapping on the company that helped me. I mean, they did give me some other wisdom and insight that was specific to my business. But that wisdom and that one phrase was so powerful in shifting my mindset to a posture of trusting, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think because of my experiences with leaders dumping and not delegating appropriately, you know, I've always just had this mindset that I'm not going to be like that. And there's another thing, man, I'll be vulnerable here, is like, I don't want to become that person. And so a lot of that has to do with, so then you like, well, I got to work harder so I can show my people that, you know, they can trust me, that I'm not going to be that guy. And I'm always overly critical about myself when it comes to delegating. Because I, in my mind, I don't know if I fully even trust that to be, and this is me being frank, I don't know if I've ever really worked with anyone that actually did that right. So I can honestly say, I don't know what it looks like seeing it done the right way.
Delegating?
I've never actually worked with a boss or a leader who, in my opinion, and I'm not crapping on anybody. That's why I want to be careful, and I'm not using anybody's name, but it's like the way you describe delegation, and when you think about, you know, trust, I just haven't seen it really. I mean, I would say the closest person would probably be my current boss that I'm working with. That's the closest that I've gotten to it. And maybe I'm jaded because I haven't really seen it before. So it's like one out of like all of these leaders over the last 20 years of my adult life, and only really one person kind of standing out. So the crowd kind of is louder, to be honest with you.
That's fair. First of all, Michael, thank you for joining the call, buddy. Thank you for making that first comment. Please keep the comments rolling in here. We might not get to all of them, but we will definitely include them in what we're saying here. So first of all, delegating is not perfect. You know, everyone has a different leadership style. There should be, anything that you pass on to somebody else should involve a support system. I did a call earlier today inside of my Facebook group where I talked about teaching, coaching, and mentoring. And really that part, that's the key part of the process, and making sure you're delegating correctly. Not everybody is going to understand what to do. Teach them what you would do while giving them an opportunity to fail, right? Coach them to success so they're proficient in that task. So moving forward, they're good to go. And by the way, you might learn something from that person because you might find out that they do it better than you. And then at the end of it, you know, be that trusted person that will allow them to fail forward. And when they come to you with a mistake, as a mentor, you will guide them into success with that. And so teaching, coaching, and mentoring, those are things that every leader should know how to do. And when you're delegating, it's absolutely crucial, because you can't have that trust relationship if you can't if you can't develop a rapport with the other person, and they know that they're able to make mistakes. So a lot of leaders, the reason that they don't delegate correctly is because they pass on this ginormous task to their people. And then when they make a mistake, they chastise them for it. Well, guess what? What kind of guidance, what kind of training, what kind of coaching did you give that individual before you just dumped that crap in their lap and just expected them to do it perfectly? Yeah. Wow. You're an amazing person for doing that. But at the end of the day, that's really where the gap is. And people sometimes want to pass the work, but it's really passing off. It's not a proper handoff when you don't help them understand what the task is and how to get it done.
Right. And I think that's the key, the proper handoff, and I can say, like, for me, because I've done a lot of therapeutic work, for me, when I feel like someone is dumping or just handing it off on me like that, it makes me feel like I'm being abandoned. And for me, I know that the origin of the abandonment starts in my childhood. So I'm able to identify that, and I'm able to reframe it and say that this boss is not like my parents, or they're not like anyone else who ever abandoned me. And then I'm able to be resilient and still work through. But there's so many people, Coach, that they don't recognize that emotion is abandonment. They might think that they're just angry and irritable or frustrated at that person, but actually the core emotion and the deeper emotion underneath the iceberg could very well be some deep-seated abandonment. And so in therapy, this has come out many a times where I've worked with people and they've revealed that, like, I've able to help them to see that, like, this is a much deeper emotion than, surface level emotion, like fear, frustration, embarrassment. This is a very insidious emotion that once you identify that, there's this power and control and mastery that you develop when like, I gotta go deep sea diving in these emotions. And when you talk about trust, man, trust, and when you think about the opposite of that and you think about mistrust has to do with being abandoned and rejected, man. Those are key emotions when it comes to that. And so, man, I love helping people explore the depths of their emotions, because we don't always know, like, why I don't trust this person and what that's connected to. But I'm telling you, when you can discover what that and make that connection, it is so empowering, man. It really is.
You're right. And I have to comment, Michael, I would say that there are people that delegate better in the service, but not everybody takes their job seriously. Not everybody takes their professional development seriously, and not everybody can delegate. The second comment you made, I'm going to put up here on the screen. Part of why I think bosses may not delegate well is ego. And by the way, everything DB just got done saying, if they don't work on themselves, they will have that ego. Ego is sometimes all of the icebergs that you don't see. And yes, there's going to be that fear. Yes, there's going to be that idea in their head that, if they just give this task away, that it's not going to get done. And that could come from the abandonment because they had somebody just leaving them home all the time, or maybe they would dump them off somewhere that they were mistreated and then wouldn't come back for a day or two because that was their babysitter and that wasn't a very good person. Been there, done that. Abandonment is it's different in so many different ways. So another way that people probably feel abandonment is, to be honest with you, when their parents are there all the time and then they just brush them off on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. That happens a lot. I get caught even doing that sometimes because we are trying so hard to make sure that we are doing what we got to do to support the household that sometimes we forget about what's really important. And we've talked about that in other calls, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse there. But all of those icebergs that are there, by the way, the iceberg is you see just a little bit on top. But then if you go under the surface of the water, there's a huge chunk of ice that you don't get to see. And that chunk of ice underneath the water is all of the stuff that's contributing to the ego, to the fear, to the mistrust, to whatever is keeping that person from delegating or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it takes a lot more than just a little bit of coaching to get that through, but it can be done with coaching. It just might be a little bit longer. Really, what those people probably need, if it's really, really bad, is a therapist, somebody that can truly help them the way they need to be helped. What else did you say here? You are on it again, Michael. I think of trust as a wall. It's there. Oh my gosh, I got to put this one up there. I think of trust as a wall. It's there at the start and based on your words and actions, and it can stand tall or crumble.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to let you address that one.
Man, words are, man, that whole saying of sticks and stones may break my bones and words will never hurt me. It's the greatest lie ever told.
People have never seen that Geico commercial if they don't think words can hurt.
Words, man, words are so powerful, man. And, a lot of times we pay those words on repeat in our mind, man. And so, that's a very profound thought for sure. And, a lot of times, when you think about someone not wanting to delegate, what are they saying to that individual while they're not willing to relinquish that power and control?
Yes.
Right. And the other piece of that when we talk about trust, we're just thinking about it as this one-way thing, this one-way interchange, but really it's trust can also come up in a boss employer relationship when that employer may not trust if that employee is trying to take their spot. So I've seen that happen where you're withholding or not willing to share information. And one thing I've always just kind of realized is that you want to train people to do your job. So that way, if you're not there, they can step into that role. So you have to, and because you should be looking for that next opportunity for yourself. Why are you?
Come on, True. Come on, True. Yes.
Yeah, you gotta cross train people, man. That's what it's about. Like, what do you want to work in the same job forever?
Well, and people think of job security in that way, and that really is just sad. But when you build a culture around leadership development and servant leadership, that is one of the key components. Mm-hmm. And what you don't want is to have an employee quit and then nobody be able to backfill, and then you have to train somebody yourself to do something when really any of your other employees could do a left seat, right seat with a new employee and let them go and do what they got to do. If you have a proper cross-training system and you have multiple people able to do multiple jobs. Right. Yes, yes, and yes.
You just made a powerful statement right there. So there almost should be a standard operating procedure within a company to delegate certain tasks and responsibilities, right?
He shoots, he scores. Hey, but that does bring us to the next point here. And we're a little more than halfway through the call, so it's the perfect time to bring it up.
Yeah.
And we discussed it earlier. So let's talk about the yes man.
Let's go.
Oh man, we had a good talk about this earlier, and I loved it. I loved your reaction to it because it feels like second nature to me, but it evidently is not. Yeah. So people look at the yes man. The yes man is the person who always does what they're asked with no objections. They might have questions, but no objections. Now, when I'm saying this, I want you to think about that. Is that person a bad person to you? Is that person annoying because they're a goody two shoes and they're always there for the boss, and maybe they're sticking their nose up the boss's behind and the whole 9 yards? Is that the case?
We have a term for that.
Yes, brown noser. So let's think about this for a second. We talk about how that's the idea of servant leadership is that you are in the ultimate support role. You're making sure that you are supporting your seniors, your peers, and your subordinates, and you're making sure that you're selfless about it when you do it. You're keeping them in mind before yourself. That way, when it comes time for you to do your job, you're doing the best possible support role. So that yes, man. Oh, Michael, see, you read. I knew that was going to happen. Look at this. I have to put this out there. I'm calling you out. I say yes way too much, and it gets in trouble and overwhelmed. Guess what?
Wow.
You know what that means, Michael? You're a servant doggone leader.
Yes.
I will say this. You should never say no to a job that needs to get done at your place of work unless it's illegal or immoral. Because if you say no, somebody else is going to have to do it. If you want to support everybody at work, you're going to do the work that needs to be done. Guess what that also does for you when you're that person that always accepts the work, doesn't really have too many objections.
Tell them what it is, coach.
So when you actually do have an objection, say your boss comes to you and said, hey, JJ, I need you to go over, or sorry, hey, DB, I need you to go over and move that pallet of water.
Yes.
If you say, oh, I can't do that, boss. Since you do everything else that person says, they're going to look at you and say, oh, really? Well, what's the concern? Instead of, oh my gosh, this son of a gun is saying no again, and he's giving me a hard time. You are an authority in that workplace because you are very, very supportive to everybody around you. And so when you have an objection, they wonder what the actual issue is and not why is JJ or DB not doing this again. They know that you are so dependable that when something comes up that you say no, they are truly concerned and they want to know why. When you say no, or when you say you can't, or whatever that looks like, that needs to be rare. You know, if your goal is to go to work every day and do the minimum, every time you say no, you're taken away from that emotional piggy bank. And you're losing a penny worth of trust. And if you only have $1, once you get to about 5 or 6, you've already lost 6% trust. And when you lose trust every single time you say no, say that's a short amount of time, they're going to start thinking of you as lazy and ignorant and hard to deal with and all of those things that come along with that. So is a yes man really a bad thing? And by the way, Michael, if you say yes way too much, then you're a servant leader, my friend. What do you think, DB?
Man, I'm just, I'm sitting back being coached because, we had this conversation earlier and, I think I immediately implemented it. It's, you say yes more than you say no. So that way, when you say no, your no actually means something. So anybody can complain about work. And I think that's the competitive advantage we have as warriors. And that's what warrior leadership is all about, is that when you're a warrior leader and you are always putting the mission and the welfare of others above your own, when it's time to actually stand up against something that really needs to be really where you really need to stand, people are going to hear you loud and clear. I think that's a very effective strategy because it's so easy to fight the wrong battles when it comes to work, to where you just really have to get it done, follow the order, and not look at yourself as a yes man, but as someone that gets the job done. And then when it comes to, when you think about trust, right? You talked about trust. That's where I think I will say my current supervisor, where I have that level of autonomy, where he does trust me to get the job done independently. And so in that respect, as I'm thinking about it and reflecting on that, I earned that level of trust by being the go-to guy that when he says, hey, you know, I can't make it over here to this speaking engagement. Can you do it? And this is on a Friday. He calls me on a Friday. The speaking engagement is on Monday. You know, I don't have, you know, and coach, you brought up a story similar earlier. Your timing was that you had a shorter timeline than me, but I mean, get a call on the Friday, you got to be before these people and represent a large agency. Man, I'm gonna be honest, that whole weekend, I'm not focusing on what I have to do at home because I'm like, man, I'm getting ready to stand before this large crowd. Like, I don't want to mess it up. Do I need to, you know, it's all these things go through your mind.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing that I think in the moment that doesn't go through your mind, which is what we are talking about here, which is like, wow, he's delegating this responsibility to me and he trusts me to deliver. And that only comes from doing, we talk about this a lot, doing that after actions review and realizing like, wow, this man really trusts me because they already know who he is and they know what he's going to deliver. He's been doing this work a lot longer than me, right? And for him to say, Derek can step into my place, it really shows a lot of trust on his part for me. And that's where, like, that's what I love about this talk is that delegating has to do with trust. And I think that's powerful, man, when you think about it that way. So why, like, trust is such a important part of the human experience. And
Now,
it's more important than anything else, man.
now you brought up a lot of good things there, and you know, something stuck out that we haven't discussed yet. So if you're a senior leader or maybe you own a small business and you have 5 or 6 people, right? This is one dichotomy that has to be balanced. And it's been this way at every duty assignment, every job I've ever had, at every place I've ever been. You can overuse people just because they can handle anything you throw at them. That doesn't mean you should. You know, people deserve to have peace of mind at work. And when they are willing to do anything that you ask them to do, don't abuse that. You should use that to your advantage and thank them for doing that stuff. But you can actually overdo that. What you don't want to do is burn that person out, because that can happen. So, you know, there's a dichotomy to leadership. There's a dichotomy to delegation. There's a dichotomy for everything that you do. I mean, my goodness, you can have sweets every once in a while, but that doesn't mean you should have them every day, all day. I mean, that life is all about balance. Don't abuse those people that are really, really good to you. And that at the end of the day, that is who these people that we trust so much are. When it comes to delegation, just that's the one consideration that you need to be really, really careful for. If you don't have as much trust for most people on your team, but then there's one go-to guy, because there always is. Doesn't really matter what team you're on. There's always a go-to guy. Don't abuse your go-to guy. There's a developmental opportunity for the other people on that team to get to where that go-to guy is if you just give them a little bit of work.
Man, coach, you want to talk about creating high-performing teams. That's what I heard you just say right now, man. That is so powerful, man. That sage wisdom is so crucial. Like, just you think about all the greats, man. You talk about sports, right? You think about players like Michael Jordan, Kobe, and things like that. I wonder, you know, how many, like, the movie is funny because, like, in the movie Waterboy, the coach was like, hey, we can only depend on you. The rest of these guys out here they're stinking up the field, right? So it's like, you know, it's kind of like that. It's like when you have the doer on the team, the person that's willing to drive change and drive, you know, productivity. You're right. You have to, because what will happen is like that person could start developing resentment towards you, and so I already know what your answer is going to be to this question because we've been working together for a while, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How does that leader monitor and make sure that that doesn't happen?
Whoo, that's a tough one. So if you have a bunch of people standing around, but you always have one guy who's constantly moving, then you're overdoing it. Let's use Waterboy for an example, right? So they abuse the crap out of Waterboy that whole movie. But then when it came towards the end and Mama wouldn't let him show up that day, the team did okay.
Yeah.
But all he had to do was show up and use that person that is your high performer as the example and slowly start integrating the rest of the team into those same practices. And you'll have a high performing team, because after Bobby Boucher came out on that field and started playing just a little bit, and then he left again and let them finish the game, they played like champions.
Mm-hmm.
So let that person be an example. Put him out in front of your people and let him know that if you want to move up in this organization, if you want to be given more responsibility, you need to be willing to do the job, and you'll start having people step up. And if they don't step up, force them to do it. Don't promote them, but give them additional work. And when they see that that person got recognition for doing the right thing, it's almost like the mouse that gets the cheese, my friend. They're all gonna start following suit. Leading by example is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Let that person be the leader, and you're an even better leader for not taking the credit, and just shine light on that person and start giving other people work, and the rest will follow. Comments, questions, concerns?
Coach, I'm not coming after that.
And you know what, Michael, you're right. Energy is infectious. Energy is infectious. But you need, if this is the leading by example series, people, that's it. You know, if you don't want to burn somebody out, stress them out for a little bit, and then give that person acknowledgement, and then start giving other people work, and they're going to follow suit. Now you're always going to have about 10 to 20% of your workforce that just, they're not going to cut the mustard. I hate to say it, but that is so true. But if you have 8 out of 10 people operating at an extremely high level, then if you have 2 people that are duds at the bottom, does that really matter that much? Not really. Not really, because you can do the most with 80% of your workforce. And that's a statistic right there. And that, by the way, that has never failed me. The first time I heard that, I was an E5 in the Army, and I kept that on the top of my mind, and I never, ever, ever tried to judge anybody or look for the low performers. But I noticed that it's always a couple people, 2 or 3 people that are just, they're either trying to be difficult, or they just, I'm sorry to say this, but they're just not there. I don't know how else to say that. Okay, there's an actual question here, and then we're gonna cut sling load here. But Michael actually has a question. I like the idea of leading by example, but don't you need to know how your people learn as the boss? Yes. That'll be a conversation for another time, but all I will say is this. Know your people's strengths and weaknesses. Get to know them all on an individual level by making sure you circulate on a regular basis. And when you have conversations and you assist people once in a while, and you communicate, and if you have other down trace managers that work for you and you communicate with them, you're going to learn the strengths and weaknesses of everybody if you pay attention. I hope that answers your question. I'm going to dangle that carrot. I'm not going to give the whole thing to you right now, because we can do a whole topic on that. All right. But anyway, we're 5 minutes past. Thank you for being here. DB, do you have any closing comments on delegation before we cut sling load here?
No, sir. I'm good to go. Everyone have a good day.
Really? Nothing? Okay, cool. Well, if you see this on all the other this is on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and X and whatever. It's all over social media. But if you see it, like it, subscribe to it, do whatever, reshare it, make sure it goes to your audience if you appreciate it, but keep the conversation going by commenting below the video so that DB and I can assist you with whatever concerns you may have. Everybody have a great day. God bless.